necesariamente representan los puntos de vista de la Red Nacional de Jornaleras y Jornaleros. Si usted considera que el contenido es ofensivo o inapropiado, lo invitamos a compartir su opinión, queja o sugerencia en nuestra página radiojornalera.org.
Jornaleros, llegaron, tocando cumbia los jornaleros. Mueve la cintura, también los pies, mueve la cintura, también los pies, mueve la cintura, también los pies, mueve la cintura, también los pies. Le cantan al trabajador, le cantan al trabajador, le cantan al trabajador, le cantan al trabajador. El pueblo unido no será vencido, el pueblo unido no será vencido, el pueblo unido no será vencido, el pueblo unido no será vencido nunca. Y llegaron. Llegaron, tocando cumbia los jornaleros. Llegaron, tocando cumbia los jornaleros. Mueve la cintura, también los pies, mueve la cintura, también los pies, mueve la cintura, también los pies, mueve la cintura, también los pies. Le cantan al trabajador, le cantan al trabajador.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to get started. So if you'd like to take your seats, we appreciate you. We will have all the candidates to select their places. So thank you so much for joining us tonight. This is a community-led forum that multiple organizations in the city of Pasadena. We've been doing these types of forums since 2017 to really advocate and also allow the community to get to know who they will be voting for, who they should vote for. You'll hear directly from the candidates yourself. Just for clarification purposes, none of the organizations that are listed on the flyer can make any endorsements. Most of us are nonprofit organizations, and so we don't endorse any candidates, but we do create spaces for the community to be able to hear from them, and then you can make your own decisions. Also wanted to be known that every single candidate in each race, Senate and Assembly, was invited tonight. Now, whether they decided to show up or not, that's based upon their own judgment, and we respect that. But we did want the community to know that everybody was invited. And so, yeah, here we are today. We're going to start with introductions. And so each candidate has, Okay. Each candidate has 1 minute to introduce themselves. And then we're going to start with Senate first with Sasha. And then we're going to move our way all the way down the line. And just for clarification purposes, organizations that are listed on our flyer will have the opportunity to ask questions, and then we might have some time at the end for community questions as well. All right, let's start with Sasha. 1 minute.
Hi. Okay, great. It's working. Hi, everybody. My name is Sasha Renee Perez. I'm the Vice Mayor of the City of Alhambra and currently a candidate for State Senate District 25. I'm very proud to be running in this community. This is a community that I've lived in for my entire life, and that 3 generations of my family have been here in the San Gabriel Valley. I come from a policy advocacy background. I've spent a majority of my career working particularly in education policy, doing a lot of work actually right here at PCC to reform financial aid, to ensure that students have a clear transfer pathway, and to ensure that students can achieve their college dreams. On the City Council, I've worked on a number of issues, everything from creating our city's first sustainability plan, creating our city's first active transportation plan, and also bringing social workers and mental health workers to be a part of our city's public safety team to respond to the rising homelessness crisis that I think all of us have seen throughout our communities. I'm very proud to, to be running for State Senate. Thank you all so much.
Thank you. As we all know, we have our famous Mark Jomsky who keeps our time for city council meetings. So my brother here in the front, when you hear his bell, you can just stop, and that will be your cue. He's going to be our Mark Jomsky tonight, all right? All right, thank you. Councilwoman Elizabeth.
Okay, yes, Colin's on top of it. Thank you, Colin. My name's Elizabeth Wong Allers, running for State Senate here in this Pasadena area. I am currently serving on council in La Crescenta. I have some of my family here. My husband, Ron, there. We've been married 34 years. Grew up in Glendale, went to UCLA together. This is my youngest son, Johnny. So Johnny is the youngest of 6. So Ron and I have raised and educated 6, and all 6 have attended Pasadena City College. So I really commend this college for their wonderful performance and transfer rates. Our children have all gone to UC, and the last one went to Patrick Henry in Virginia, and Johnny's currently still a student. So I'm running on Love, Lives, Liberty, and Law. I like to say that it all starts with love. Your lives are important, and liberty operates when good laws promote peace and prosperity. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, my name is Michelle Martinez, and I'd like to say thank you for your time and consideration in coming out tonight. I think it's one of the greatest opportunities we have is to have fair elections and to know who our candidates are. And unfortunately, in recent years, we've seen less and less folks come out to vote, and I think that we comprise our communities and have a very important role in selecting who our leadership is. I'm a first-generation American, a Peruvian. My parents both came when they were 19 from Peru, went to PCC, as did I. And I actually was part of the student council here in, not going to say what year. Let's just say it was decades and decades and decades ago. But I love Pasadena. I was born and raised here, and I had the opportunity to speak to some folks before the event got started. And it was because what we're seeing in our city and across the state, I really want to be able to help.
Oh, that's okay. I have one. Hello, my name is Falante Riddle, and I'm a candidate for State Assembly. I grew up in Altadena, and I've made my home here in Pasadena with my husband and 3 adult sons, 3 daughter-in-laws, and 6 little grandbabies. I am currently a state commissioner. I do the discharge consideration for all incarcerated youth, the rehabilitation. My doctorate is in psychology. I actually started here at PCC as a student from John Muir High School. And so I also work in the area of reentry on to ensure that our youth get a good pathway back. I'm also the former district director for Assemblymember Chris Holden, who has endorsed me. I worked on transportation with the Gold Line, as well as a number of issues with housing and working with those individuals who are unhoused citizens in placement, transitional housing, and I've also worked on the issue of dual enrollment. I'm very pleased to say that I collaborated with Pasadena City College and Glendale and Cerritos College to get dual enrollment on the high school campuses. So thank you very much, and I look forward to having an opportunity to share more.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Jed Liano. I am on the City Council in Claremont, was mayor of Claremont in 2022, and for the last 17 years, I've been an immigration attorney here in Pasadena, practicing federal immigration law, representing people who are facing deportation. I was drawn to that work because I'm the son of immigrants from the Philippines. And 6 years ago, I was called to public service because of one reason, and that's homelessness. I wanted to not only improve the programming and the policies that we had in my community, I also felt that there needed to be a champion in this region to fight for the cause of affordable housing and reducing homelessness. By my second year in office in Claremont, I reduced homelessness by 41%. I'm now the chair of the San Gabriel Valley Regional Housing Trust. I represent the San Gabriel Valley on La Casa, the LA County Affordable Housing Agency, and I'm also the chair at Tri-City Mental Health, where I've expanded mental health care for unhoused neighbors through our new psychiatric assessment care team program. I am proud to be a candidate for the Assembly, and it's a pleasure to be with all of you. Thank you to the organizers.
Thank you. All right, we're going to start this off with questions. We have organizations who, as I said, sponsored this event tonight, and each organization will have the opportunity to ask a question. Each candidate will get a minute, about a minute to 2 minutes. Okay, great. 2 minutes to answer each question. I know it's hard. It's hard to just put everything that you've done and all your policies in 2 minutes. But we're going to try our best, all right? The first question is coming from Complete Streets.
Hi, my name is Liz Schiller. I am a member and active member and leader in the Pasadena Complete Streets Coalition. Do you want to mic me? Okay. My name is Liz Schiller. I'm with the Pasadena Complete Streets Coalition. We work for safer streets for all users of a street. And my question for the candidates is, we've seen some conflicts recently about building more highways. The stated goal of the state is to reduce total vehicle miles traveled because transportation is one of our main contributors to climate change. What will you do to rein in Caltrans? Because they really just seem to want to build more freeways.
All right, I'm going to start with Councilwoman Elizabeth.
Thank you, Liz. Caltrans. My dad worked for Caltrans. He's a civil engineer. My grandfather worked for the Army Corps of Engineers building the LA flood control system in the 1930s. There's infrastructure for our state that is a responsibility of our state government and an importance in our roads. As I was speaking to Colin about bicycles, I'm so interested in his experience riding his bike from LA to Glendale for work, right? And I told him, that's awesome. I can still ride a bike, but not very far. Where we serve in La Crescenta, it's these foothills. And there's a lot of concern of our residents that if they're forced to ride a bike to work, they won't be able to get home up the hills. So I think that the big highways are important statewide. Local governments local governments should have more control over particular transportation on local areas, because every area is different. So, thank you.
Thank you. All right. If any of you guys need Complete Streets to re-ask the question, just let us know, and we'll do that. Sasha?
Great. So I've been a huge advocate for active transportation. In particular, while I've been the vice mayor and a council member and a mayor in the city of Alhambra, Active SGB actually awarded me their Elected Official of the Year award back in 2021 for the work that I did to bring some of Alhambra's first ever temporary bike lanes so that we could test those out in the city. What needs to happen is we need to start rerouting those dollars away from freeway expansion and focus them on active transportation projects in local communities. I can tell you right now, as somebody that's actively been working on an active transportation plan for the last 2 years with my colleague Jeff Maloney, that they are very expensive, and there's very little resources available to actually fund those plans. In the city of Alhambra, in order to get our plan funded, I convinced my other council colleagues to pull money out of our emergency fund just so we could fund our plan. We are now being reimbursed with Measure R dollars because we worked with the county to convince them to allow for those dollars to be utilized for active transportation infrastructure, but this is a policy that we really need to see implemented all throughout the state. If you all have ever heard of anything called induced demand, it is this idea that as we expand freeways, we are just creating more traffic. And I think many folks have realized now that the science has proven just that. Freeway expansion does not reduce traffic, it actually just increases traffic. And so we need to move away from this idea and focus on investing monies into active transportation. That means protective bike lanes, that means high visibility pedestrian crosswalks. These are the things that keep us safe. They're the things that increase walkability of our communities, and they are also the things that actually reduce traffic in our communities, getting folks out of their cars. Earlier, the individual from Complete Streets mentioned how this is connected to environmental concerns. So much of our environmental impacts are driven by transportation. This is how we cut greenhouse gas emissions.
All right. So tonight I'm going to ask you guys to put on your thinking caps when it comes to being critical thinkers, which I know all of you in the room are. But it isn't just about bureaucracy and how we can fix things. It really is asking ourselves, what is the catalyst? So I remember when the Gold Line came in, I was so excited about the Gold Line because at the time, living in Altadena, it's literally 16 miles door to door to get to my job in downtown LA, and it could take me anywhere from a half hour on a good lucky day if I was on an off hour to 2 hours during traffic. And so when the Gold Line came in, I was really excited about it, and I said, you know, I was the first one there to buy my ticket. I was gonna use the Gold Line, and it took me over an hour to get to work. So it didn't help, it didn't work. And although it was a good thought and a good idea, at the end of the day, it didn't help me. And so as leaders, I think we set a tone. We are responsible for ensuring that the programs that we create and the solutions that we provide are actually working for our constituents. And so that's what I want you guys to think of. My dad was an omnibus driver. First, he worked in aeronautics, but then he decided to work for Omni Transportation. And it was incredible. I told my dad all the time, how did you get away with that? Because he would see somebody running for the bus and he would actually stop for them. Or he would find somebody who didn't have the necessary, money, and he would just put it in there and say, no problem, come in today. And this is the kind of leadership I think that is missing today, that compassion to really understand how can we be of service and not just throw program and more bureaucracy at it, but how do we really make a difference. I'm so thankful for the Gold Line, but also I wish it really worked.
If we're really serious about moving away from freeways and cars, then we have to do a better job of making sure that the transportation, the goal line, and the various other lines, blue line, pink line, whatever you want to call it, is safe and reliable. Working under the leadership of Assemblymember Holden, I cannot tell you the countless meetings that I went to on this particular area to move people out of their cars, but also to provide other transportation modes through the buses to ensure that people can get to those various goal lines and transportations. I too grew up in Altadena in the Meadows, and so walking down Lincoln to get to that bus, to get to another port of transportation is real. And as a mother of three, and grocery shopping and taking kids to 3 different schools, I was not on a bicycle, I can tell you. So that may not work for everyone. Where I would love to be able to say, yes, for those people that can, absolutely, but for those of us that can't, it's not going to be feasible. Also, I worked on the Mayor of Pasadena's Housing Task Force on our RENA numbers, and we were very clear in the city of Pasadena, and every city has to make their own decisions, but we were very clear that housing, multi-unit housing for low income and up to medium income housing was going to go in those areas around transit transportation. And so you'll see the housing units going in areas on Union and Walnut, Colorado, these various streets, because that's the easiest way to get people to the goal line. And I am absolutely committed to ensuring that the work that Assemblymember Holden started is going to be completed under my leadership if you elect me, because we have got to ensure that we get that line from Ontario Airport to Burbank. Thank you.
I want to thank the Complete Streets Coalition for the question, and the question about what can we do about Caltrans. It's a much deeper question, because in California, we have our transportation funding priorities completely out of whack. I mean, the state of California, we give $7,500 federal and state credits to people for buying $50,000, $60,000, $70,000 electric vehicles. Why aren't we giving people $7,500 to ride public transit, to invest in electric bicycles, and to expand walkable neighborhoods so that we can walk to stores and not have to burn fossil fuels just to do things like go to the post office or go to the grocery store to get milk? Let me tell you about the track record that I have in Claremont of expanding active transportation and approving a Complete Streets program. My first action on the City Council in Claremont in 2019 was to approve a Complete Streets program, and since then, we have Class 4 bike lanes that go from the eastern side to the western border of our city. And now we have subsidized the purchase of electric bikes, also giving rebates for rentals for people who are not ready to buy electric bikes. We also are expanding sidewalks in the most pedestrian-used areas in our community. Cities can't do this alone. Most cities only have enough funding just to repave and maintain the roads that they designed and engineered in the 1950s. We have got to think of 15-minute cities where everyone in your community can walk, bike, ride transit, and get to basic amenities within a very short trip that doesn't involve a fossil fuel burning car. There's no question that electrification is the future of cars, but transit and active transportation is the future of transportation. And in order to do that and make that a priority, we have to fund our communities that way. And I intend to do that. Thank you very much.
Thank you. At this time, we're going to bring up Patrice from Alpha Kappa Alpha's sorority. She's going to introduce her sorority, and then she has the next question.
Good evening. Patrice Marshall McKenzie, member of Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated, a Lambda Omega chapter here in Pasadena. We have been serving here since 1960, and Alpha Kappa Alpha is the oldest sorority for Black women established in this country. We are 116 years old as of this year. The question that we are going to ask is related to education. Public education is the cornerstone of our democracy. As an institution, it is one of the greatest pathways for providing Californians with community and economic stability and mobility. What will you do to protect the minimum investments for Proposition 98 allocations in our budget? How will you also identify ways to grow the Proposition 98 floor so that our schools continue to have the funds needed to educate California's future workforce and the future leaders?
We'll start with Jed.
Thank you very much for the question, and congratulations on 116 years. That's really noteworthy and deserves recognition. I just want to start by saying that I often talk about my housing advocacy with a strong belief that it touches every other area of policy. And I want to make one thing very clear, and that is in my community and in a lot of communities here in the San Gabriel Valley, the number one challenge that we have to maintaining a robust public school enrollment and then therefore strong public education budgets is fundamentally the ability for families to achieve housing stability and stay in their communities. And when housing affordability negatively impacts the capacity of a family to stay in a school district, that not only impacts that family and those children's educational outcomes, it also impacts the ability of districts to normalize and operationalize their school budgets. So the number one thing that we can do to ensure stable flow of revenue for all of our public school districts is we have got to rein in housing costs. And we've got to do that for families so that they can afford to stay in the communities where they work and where they live and where the children go to school. And we have also got to do that for the educators, because when teachers have to commute 1.5 hours by car just to get to a public school where they work, that is not a sustainable model and system to ensure that we have a long-term sustainable funding source for our public school districts. And so I believe that the answer to this is long-term investments in workforce housing, specifically for school district employees, and ensuring that working families have the capacity to stay and live in the places where they work so that their children can go to school in the same communities. Thank you.
To answer her question, our school districts should not be manned by the zip code you live in. Too often, we have too many people that live in lower economic communities or where they don't have a robust housing. I will share with you that our children are suffering. I believe strongly in universal preschool, getting children assessed early by the regional centers. My own 2-year-old grandson is speech delayed, and he has already been assessed. He just turned 3, so now he'll be under the school district's preview to receive the services that he needs. But we are on a roller coaster with our school districts. I would like to ensure, and I'm going to use this city because it has a robust school district, that every child gets the same education that La Cañada Flint Ridge has for their schools, but that's not the case. We are on a roller coaster. I said earlier that when the economy for the state of California is robust, then we get more funds. When we are in a downflux, then we lose funds for our school districts. School districts should not be on that roller coaster. Our kids need to be educated regardless of what's going on with the state's economy. And so right now we have 98, Prop 98, how dare they put us on the floor? That needs to be raised. We need to fund our schools. We need to ensure that our students, starting from the earliest ages, are educated, because they're not. As a commissioner over the Department of Juvenile Justice, I can tell you right now where they will end up. There's too many stats and statistics that say that if a child can't read by the age of 3rd grade and comprehend by the time they're in 8th grade, that private prisons know how many beds they're going to need. And if we have that kind of information, how dare we not do something about it immediately? Thank you.
Okay, well, I'm going to talk about the elephant in the room, and that's not because I'm a Republican. So California, I was just reading the report. $103.3 billion are being spent in education. $103.3 billion from K to universities. And what are we seeing in our education system? That nothing is changing. When I was councilwoman for the city of Altadena, I had the opportunity to tour our schools in the district. And I didn't want to say anything to the teacher who toured me, but I left with a grieving heart, and I'll tell you why. Because the teacher that was taking me through was showing me the classes for English as a second language. I was raised in my home speaking Spanish, and frankly, I didn't speak English until I had to go to school. Same thing with my sister. And I was old enough to take my sister when she had to go to school and get her assessed. And she spoke zero English. It was always Spanish in the house. The kindergarten teacher told me she would have to be put in English and as a second language. And I was only 21 at the time. And I remember fighting for her, and I said, absolutely not. She's going to be put in a regular classroom, and in 3 months you can evaluate her, and if it's detrimental to her, then we'll reevaluate. Within 2 weeks, all she was doing was speaking English. And this is what we're doing to our kids. We're literally taking them from kindergarten, graduating them, and they're still in English as a second language. And we're doing them a disservice. Instead of looking in the rearview mirror, we should be looking forward and asking ourselves, how do we prepare them for life? And I want them to have every opportunity possible. I'm a first-generation American. My parents came from Peru when they were 19 years old. They didn't know how to help me, but they knew that the library was there, and they would take me to the library and make me advocate for myself and say, go ask them, get help. And that's the kind of spirit I want to ingrow in our children, that they have everything they need within them to get to wherever they want to go. And I truly believe that. Thank you.
Thank you.
There's a proverb that says, train up a child in the way he should go, and in the end he will not depart from it. Training our children is the responsibility of all of us. And children have been entrusted first to their parents. So as a mother of 6 children and a grandmother of 3 little children, education has been my life for the past 30 years. I have a bachelor's in linguistics, and then I got a master's in teaching English as a second language. I actually interviewed here at Pasadena City College, and I ended up getting the job at Glendale Community College. I've taught at Valley College and also UCLA and internationally, and I homeschooled all 6 of my children from from birth to graduation, and they've graduated from college, graduate school. So I look at, as Michelle said, $103 billion spent on education here in California, and we're near the bottom of the list in literacy and just the basics out of all 50 states. So it's not working the way we're doing it. I do support school choice, where our tax money goes to the families so the families can choose. It doesn't have to be this school or that school, but the families can choose an alternative that works for their children. We're part of Glendale Unified School District, and there's been a lot of controversy over that I don't have time to talk about, but education is the heart of my heart.
I appreciate this question, and for the audience members that don't know what Prop 98 is, Prop 98 was a proposition that was passed many years ago that set aside 39% of the state budget to go towards K through 14. So that means our K through 12 institutions as well as our community college institutions like this one. CSUs and UCs are not included in that, and so every year CSUs and UCs have to go up and fight for the funding that they receive. So what does that mean? That means that in budget years, when the budget is down, that means that there's less money that's going through to the K through 14 system. And when the budget is really good, like it has been in years past, that means there's a lot more money going into that education system. So, you know, what Patrice was speaking to is this issue of equity, making sure that we are investing those dollars towards school districts, towards students that really need it. I've done a lot of this work in the past. There's a bill that I worked on a very long time ago called the Local Control Funding Formula that actually sought to ensure that districts that were serving a larger number of low-income students were receiving more resources to provide them with the kind of critical supports that they need in order to be successful and to go on to college and university. That's the kind of thoughtfulness that we need as we're approaching this. In addition to that, I've worked on a number of budget advocacy, and in bad budget years too. I actually came into my work and policy work during a bad budget year. If you all remember the 2007 market crash, that did horrendous things to the state budget. And it meant that suddenly tuition was skyrocketing all across the state, and many faculty members and teachers were receiving pink slips. During that time, I worked on a very large budget ask along with many other students and helped the CSU receive $97 million additional dollars to the CSU system, which allowed for us to continue to enroll students, right? Every time that we turn a student away, that's another student that's not going to get that good paying job and enter into our state's economy.
All right. And just so you guys know, Colin's going to keep that sound going until you stop talking. All right, next question. Next question is from UP. It's a UP organization, and they are all about education. And their question is, a California appeals court ruled that San Francisco could continue allowing non-citizen parents to vote in school board elections. However, that law will be interpreted the same across the state. Would you be in favor of a state law clarifying that all local jurisdictions in California has the same right as San Francisco to extend voting rights to qualified non-citizens? And we're going to start this question with Falante.
If you have children in any school district, you have a right to have a voice. And so I am not going to advocate discriminating against people that have children in our school districts. My father came from Jamaica. My daughter-in-law is from Ireland. And so I know what it is to go through that whole immigration nightmare. And so I will just share with you that I would advocate that we treat people equally in this state, in this country, and that we ensure that our children who can't speak for themselves, their parents get to speak for them. Thank you.
This question really hits home personally for me, because not only am I the son of immigrants from the Philippines, my dad was on a Navy ship during the Cuban Missile Crisis. My mom was a hospital nurse at the Veterans Hospital and immigrated here during the late 1960s. For the last 17 years, I've been representing immigrants who are the most marginalized and disenfranchised people in our society. They all work, and they all pay taxes. They're not eligible for any federal benefits. And most of the time, they're usually afraid to report when they're victims of crime because they're afraid of their immigration information being passed on to federal authorities. There is fundamentally nobody more powerless, disenfranchised, and without representation than immigrants. And I've spent the last 2 decades and my entire working career as an attorney representing to make sure that those families have someone sticking up for them just to have the chance to have the right to be here and give their kids a shot in America. And so I just want to tell you that giving people the opportunity to make decisions on what's best for their children's education, that is absolutely the least that we owe folks who are the backbone of our economy. That's the absolute least that we owe them, and without question, I would offer that in support, yes.
Wow. So this is a really tough subject for me to broach, and so I'm going to do it as carefully as possible because the first commandment from God is to love. And I agree with both of them. Parents have a right. They're probably the only ones that have the right to raise up their children in the way they should go. And unfortunately, in California, we've stripped those rights from our parents. So it's a real fallacy for us to be standing here and saying, we really want them to vote. We want them to have a voice for our children, when the policies in California are stripping parents from the parental rights. And so we can't speak of one thing without speaking of the other. America stood for something. It's why millions of people came here legally to America. And in my own family, I have had to live it because I have family members that came here out of desperation from Peru. And they didn't come here legally, they came here illegally. And I'll tell you what they found. They found a very hard way of life because they didn't have the proper documentations. And so what they ended up doing was going back to to Peru. And they waited 16 years to come to America, the right and legal way. And I'm very proud to say that my cousin came with my aunt, and he is an amazing individual. At a very young age, got married, bought a home. He works for FedEx. And bought his first home, bought a second home. He's got a beautiful family. And I'd love to see that. But what that meant is he had to go back and do things the right way. And so for those individuals that are here, we really have to be asking ourselves, what does America look like? And how do we instill the proper legislation so that we can continue to do what's right by America?
I'm very supportive of what the City of San Francisco is doing to pursue allowing for immigrant parents to be allowed to vote in school board elections. I know that Pasadena Unified School District has had conversations about potentially doing the same thing, and we've also had this conversation in Alhambra Unified School District, particularly with our high school students. I have one of my high school volunteers with me here today, Ian Chen, and I have many high school students that are involved in my campaign, and part of how I began kind of working with and teaching these students about how policy advocacy and campaigns work is their interest in this campaign. And they brought up a very good point. If our parents are stakeholders in this community, if they are stakeholders within this school system, why should they not be able to have a voice? And this is the question, the central question that I think many of us are asking right now as we look at doing this. I know the City of New York is having the same conversation. And for me, the answer is yes, that they should have a voice. As was mentioned before, these are folks that pay taxes. Their kids are attending our school system, and their attendance into our school system brings our district's dollars. These are benefits, and having them participate in our elections, I think, is one of the least things that we can do. We have a huge immigrant population that is mostly in the southern part of the district. That is my side, and the city of Alhambra, the city of Monterey Park, a largely both immigrant population that is both Asian American as well as Latino. And so, making sure that those folks feel represented, making sure that those folks feel like they have a voice and they're able to participate in our elections makes a lot of sense to me.
I'd like to start by reading part of our California Constitution. This is Article 1, Section 1. All people are by nature free and independent and have inalienable rights. Among these are enjoying and defending life and liberty, acquiring, possessing, and protecting property, and pursuing and obtaining safety, happiness, and privacy. And the education of our children and our participation in their schooling and in the school boards is part of this safety and happiness, enjoying and defending life and liberty. And we raise our children with these ideals that they grow to be not just a consumer of all the good things we have here, but a contributor to our neighbors and to our school communities and to our greater state well-being. California has a $68 billion deficit budget this year. Just a year ago, we had a surplus. 40% of California's budget goes to public education from kindergarten through Cal State and UC public education. These coming years, we are going to really feel some pain in our California education system because of this $68 billion deficit. All right, time, thank you.
All right, next up we have a question from Francisco. He's going to come ask his question, and he's also going to introduce his organization.
All right, good evening, everyone. My name is Francesco Cañas. I'm here on behalf of the National Day Labor Organizing Network, Pasadena Job Center, as well as our digital media project, which I am a part of, Radio Jornalera. So we provided the sound system and equipment for today, and we're doing the live stream as well. And of course, it will be recorded, so if you want to listen back to what our candidates have shared today after the fact, you're welcome to do so. So I have a question for all of you. Thank you. 1 second. All right. So during the lockdown, we saw how workers were provided a safety net through funds so that they could survive, except for excluded undocumented workers who contribute billions in taxes and shape the California economy. Will you support undocumented workers by supporting SB 227 to provide unemployment benefits to undocumented workers? Thank you.
We'll start with Michelle.
Thank you for that question. My answer to that is no. And I do believe that everyone deserves a hand up. So let me begin with that. But it doesn't start from the government and bureaucracy. And the reason for that is because we just perpetuate the problem. And what we're looking for are real solutions. And beginning of the evening, I asked you guys to put on your critical thinking caps, right? And what this requires is that we not just think of the immediate problem ahead of us, but how do we ensure that these individuals that need help are truly being helped? And what that means is, I'm sorry, did you have something for me? Oh, okay, I'm sorry. So anyways, what we need to do is ensure that when we are really offering assistance, that it's going to help the individual and not perpetuate the problem. And I know that's tough, because that means some people are hurting. And our hearts give out, right? That's the first thing. I've lived it in my bone and flesh. I've had family that's been homeless that I've had to help. I don't say these things half-heartedly. I say them because I've experienced them in my bone. And I want my family, and I want your family, and I want our community to be able to stand. But we're not going to do it when we keep offering subpar programs. And that's what it is. My family did not come to America for substandard programs. My family came here for the American dream. My parents got it, I got it, and I want everyone in our community to be able to have it. I say this because first and foremost, I'm a Christian, and I am commanded to love. I might not like what you think, but I am commanded to love and see how we can help you. So thank you.
Also, before Dr. Falante goes, if you do have any questions, I'm asking that you write them down, and we'll have a chance at the end, hopefully, to get you guys questions. Right? Thank you.
Okay, so the first word that he said is undocumented worker. And if someone is working in this country, in this state, and they are paying into their taxes, they've already paid for unemployment, okay? So you have to understand, for me, that I believe that once a person is part of this system, the system that we put together, then we need to ensure that they get the services that they've paid into. The other issue is that during the pandemic, we got hit hard. This is something we've never in my lifetime experienced before. And so everyone was unprepared. One day my son had a thriving business, and the next day it was shut down. So literally, if it wasn't for his parents, he would not have had any ability to function, as far as living expenses go. And so a lot of people don't have that. And if we are serious, and I am serious, and I believe many of the members here that are here today, about ensuring that we don't increase our unhoused residents, homelessness, people, food insecurities, then we need to ensure that the state helps those in serious emergency situations. And I don't see that as a handout. I see that as something that they've earned. We literally need to ensure that we are the backbone of not a handout, but ensuring that people are safe. Maslow's hierarchy of need, the 3 areas, is housing, food, and safety. And everyone in this country, in this state, in this city, in this district deserves to have that. Thank you.
I want to thank you and your organization for your support for live streaming this, and also for the excellent question. I've been doing this job for 17 years now. My first year at the American Immigration Lawyers Conference, it was the summer of 2007. And we were told at the conference that the Senate has made a deal to pass a comprehensive immigration reform bill. And we all went to bed on Saturday night at that conference in Orlando, Florida, believing that we now had a pathway to legalize anywhere between 8 to 12 million people who are just like you and me, who are working and paying taxes just like you and me, and the only difference between you and me and them is that they were not born here. And when we woke up the next day, we found out that the deal that they had brokered to legalize and come up with a comprehensive immigration reform package was dead. And it is now 16 years later, and we still haven't done it. Every single time that there is a hotly contested political debate or an election, in the end, the plight and the condition of immigrants is nothing more than a football that gets passed around, and in the end, who pays for it? Immigrants and their families. And so let me tell you what is my position on that bill, and let me tell you what is my position on that issue, and it is simple. The toxic rhetoric about immigrants being a drain on society is completely wrong. Whenever I hear it, I will fight back on it. Every single year, immigrants pay taxes into payroll systems that fund Social Security for benefits that they will never receive. And that is wrong. And so any chance that we have to at least show the dignity and respect for our immigrant neighbors who are contributing to this economy, I will have their back on that vote and every vote in the future. Thank you.
regarding the last question on parents voting for school board members when they are not allowed to vote for documentation purposes, and it does overlap into this question on funds being paid to undocumented workers. It is there does need to be a streamlined, fixed process for citizenship of those who are here and are on that track. It's painful what they go through in waiting. And some of them really do want to be full citizens and vote for every opportunity they have. And then to receive all of the benefits that our country and our nation have to offer. And that's why they're here. But there is a law and there is an order that needs to be followed, or our society becomes chaotic. There is love and there is compassion. As I said, it starts with love. Love, lives, everyone's lives, the undocumented workers, as well as the parents that want to vote in school boards, for school boards. Love, lives, but liberty only operates when good laws promote this peace and prosperity. So that is my position on it. But my heart is to love all of our neighbors. And in Sacramento, as state senator, I would use much wisdom. Thank you.
So the question that was asked was about whether or not I support a legislation called SB 27, which would provide unemployment benefits to undocumented workers. And yes, I do support SB 27, which provides unemployment benefits to undocumented workers. You know, I think it's, I'm going to try to, I know there's been a lot of things that have been said already, so I'm going to try to add new things to the conversation. My grandfather immigrated to this country through the Bracero program. If any of you are familiar with that program, it was a program that was created during World War II because the United States needed more workers. And my grandfather was one of many workers that traveled here under the promise that he would be granted U.S. citizenship. When he arrived here, he was given a green card, and it took him almost 30 years to gain his full citizenship. By the time my grandfather became a citizen, he was actually in his late 80s, but he was so proud that he voted in every single election because he wanted nothing more than to be a United States citizen. But that just gives you a little bit of a taste of just how long it is to achieve citizenship when you come here, even if you come the right way. Whether you come as an immigrant, whether you come as an asylum seeker, the process is way too complicated. It is way too long. There are too many people that are stuck in the pipeline, and it needs fixing. Now, none of us here, unfortunately, can fix that because we are not running to represent Congress. But what we can do is ensure that those workers that are undocumented have the benefits and the supports that they need so that they can survive. That is what we are talking about here. I serve as the Los Angeles Homeless Services Authority as a commissioner there, and I will tell you on the LAHSA Commission, as I've been there for the last 2 years, that we have seen a dramatic increase, about 20% in Latino homelessness. And it is being driven by our undocumented population because there is very little supports available for them. So this is how we address that problem and make sure that people are safe and taken care of.
All right, at this time, we're going to call back Patrice for the next question.
I'm a woman of a certain age. I need to be able to see these days. The California Corrections and Peace Officers Association, CCPOA, is a powerful voice in public safety policy. How will you implement public safety policy that is best for the people of California and not what CCPOA drives as their agenda?
Sasha?
So, you know, I think I've had a lot of experience working particularly on this issue of addressing public safety through a lens of both compassion as well as one that's also getting results. You know, I know we've heard a lot about the homelessness crisis, not tonight, but everywhere, all over the news. And part of the reason why I first ran for office is because I lost 2 of my family members to the homelessness crisis. One of my family members accidentally overdosed on fentanyl. That was back in 2018. And that experience was so devastating for myself and my family, and I was so angry that I felt like something needed to be done. And after working behind the scenes in policy for so many years, I thought maybe I could do something about it. And so I decided to run for Alhambra City Council, and you know, had seen that we too, as a small city, were also facing challenges with homelessness. And so part of what we've done is we've partnered with Los Angeles County Department of Mental Health, LA County DMH, and LACADA, which is LA County Alcohol and Drug Rehabilitation Centers, to make sure that we have clinicians and mental health workers as a part of our city's public safety team. What this allows us to do is to be able to respond to people that are experiencing a mental health crisis. We're able to go and provide them if they need a social worker, they're there. If somebody's facing drug or alcohol addiction, we can go ahead and immediately get them rehabilitation services. We always have 6 beds available, and it is an incredibly effective model, and we've seen a lot of results and have seen incredible success stories. The model that we have in Alhambra has won awards from the county and is now being modeled across the rest of LA County. So this is how we get to those results. I think a lot of what you've heard from activists are concerns that when you're responding to a situation where somebody is having a mental health crisis, where someone is in need of housing because they're homeless, that we're not providing them with the kind of services that they actually need. And what we've done in Alhambra is just that. So I think that this is the way we need to address this, and we need programs like this all across the state.
Public safety. We know that there's been a problem with smash and grab going into retail stores. We know that retail stores in San Francisco have been leaving the city without the available shopping opportunities because the businesses cannot combat the $950. It's actually an incentive to steal from the store with very little repercussions. And law enforcement that's not supported, and they're barred from intervening. The employees at the store themselves are not allowed to intervene. So it's business loss, and then it's lost to cities. Even here in Glendale at the Americana, we saw that happen. So laws need to be enforced. Proposition 47 and 57, they need to be repealed, or modified, so that the criminals are not incentivized to prey on the citizens and the businesses. The homeless problem is also a public safety issue. Our streets and our sidewalks, our public parks, these are places for all of us to enjoy. And how many of us have avoided certain areas of our city, and we don't encourage our children to go alone to play in certain places because it's not safe. And so the homeless problem does need to be addressed for public safety. Those that want to stay, those want to stay on the streets, but they have addictions and they have mental problems. They need that help in order for our public places to be safe.
I'm sorry, I'm going to ask you to do. Can you propose your question one more time because I want to make sure I answer it properly.
California's Correction and Police Officers Association, CCPOA, is a powerful voice in public safety policy. How will you implement public safety policy that is best for the people of California and not what CCPOA drives as their agenda?
Thank you for that. I have a hard time with these questions, not because I can't or don't want to answer them, but I think that we need a lot of time to do that, and we can't do that in 2 minutes, unfortunately. But what I would ask you to do is to, again, ask yourselves, how did we get here? Because there are catalysts that we're not addressing. And when we take a step back and look at the big picture, we understand that it's not just one organization that is perpetuating the problem. It's an entire scope of policies. I'm going to bring it up because it has to be said at some point, and I'm going to say it now. In 1972, Democrats took over the Senate, and they had a majority. And they've had it since. In 1996, Democrats took majority in the Assembly. So that means since 1996, our state legislators have had the opportunity to implement and fix all the problems we're seeing today. And yet we're still enduring these issues. And so when we look at how do we fix it, I don't think it's a left or right answer. I think it's a people question. How do we do what's right for the people? How do we do what's right for everyone in our citizenry? I truly want to fix things. And I know it's hard to hear, from the left or from the right, and we have opposing issues, but we have to get back to working together. We have to get back to saying, what do we do to help our citizenry? Because we've had the opportunity to fix crime. We've had the opportunity to fix homelessness. We've had the opportunity to fix immigration, and we're no closer to it. So I would ask you all to make that consideration as we look at the policies that we're trying to enact and the leadership that we're selecting.
So for the 2 or 3 people in this room that don't know my background, I am the only person here with a law enforcement background. I am Lieutenant Riddle, retired after 28 years, 8 months, and 15 days. And I say that because, let me tell you, it was a journey. Being one of the first African-American women to be promoted in that organization here in the city of Pasadena was not just breaking glass ceilings, but some brick walls. And so I recognize with the CCPOA, yes, they do have a very strong union, but they also do a job. One of the things I commend, a number of things that I commend, but in particular, Mayor Karen Bass, is she says we will not have lawlessness, and I agree with that 100%. We have a duty to make sure that our citizens are safe. But we also have a duty to make sure that those individuals who are arrested for whatever crime there are, and again, I share with you that I'm a commissioner with the Rehabilitation for Juvenile Offenders, is that you give people the tools while they are in custody so that when they come back out, they don't re-offend. And so I intend to be a bridge with the CCPOA, the Los Angeles Police Protective League, and other law enforcement entities and the communities to make sensible laws so that we can serve our communities, so that people don't have to be afraid in minority communities, black and brown in particular, of the police, and ensure that the police officers are given the tools and the mental health that they need. Because I can tell you during my almost 30 years with the police department that officers are dealing with a lot of issues that we keep very well hidden, such as PTSD, such as mental health crisis, such as losing family members, such as drugs, and alcoholism. We have issues also, and so we have to make sure they have what they need so they can do what you need, and that's protect and serve these communities. Thank you.
I want to thank you again for the question, and it highlights and brings me back to my second year on city council and my second year in public office. It was the summer of 2020, and as a new representative for my community, I had to ask myself, what can I do to, number one, ensure that I uphold my responsibility in public office, which is to ensure the health and safety of all of my residents, but at the same time, make sure that all people are treated fairly and equitably under the law. And in examining that question, I think that the overwhelming lesson that I learned that year and what I feel confident in what we were successful in my own community was, at its core, we are our best in public safety when we believe in community policing, when we enable our own residents to be a part of a community-based oversight system, when we allow our own residents to participate in stakeholder processes, to share what the experience is for all people, no matter what your background or your race or your income, of what is your experience with law enforcement and how can we work together to improve that. And in that summer of 2020, we thought about these questions about how can we improve, and we made some meaningful reforms. And at the top of that list is the launching of our psychiatric assessment care team. I'm the chair at Tri-City Mental Health, the mental health agency for Pomona, Laverne, and Claremont, and now we work in conjunction with our police department to ensure that when somebody is facing a behavioral health crisis, we don't send armed law enforcement, because needing mental health care is not a crime. Being poor is not a crime. Having no place to sleep is not a crime. And we've worked together with the police department in Tri-City to ensure we effectively deliver those services. Thank you.
At this time, we have Colin. Right after Colin asks this question, they answer, we're going to open it up to a few community questions, so please be prepared.
Okay, so again, this is from the Pasadena Complete Streets Coalition. Injuries and fatalities in California are on the rise for all road users due to traffic crashes, but especially among pedestrians and bicyclists. Speed is often cited as a major reason for serious crashes. State Senator Scott Wiener recently proposed speed governors on all motor vehicles sold in California in an effort to reduce speeding. This is one example of something that's on the table right now. And the question is, what would you do to address the increase of fatalities and injuries on our California roads?
I'm going to start with Jed.
Thank you, Colin, for the question, and thank you for the Complete Streets Coalition for raising this. It is something that I work on constantly in the city of Claremont, and my advocacy for more complete streets, for protected bike lanes, for expanded sidewalks is why I'm endorsed by the Claremont Streets for People, the leading organization for active mobile transportation in the city of Claremont. You're right. Speed is one of the major causes, and all issues on the table, but the reality is that at its core, this is fundamentally an engineering question. If you want to ask what can we do to reduce cars' speed, the answer is in engineering. And we have to give municipalities and communities the tools that they need to redesign their streets. Lane width is directly related to how fast a car is going to travel, and then therefore how much capacity for injury that car can deliver to either a cyclist, a pedestrian, or another vehicle. But let's also talk about what is another driver of fatalities, injuries, and collisions: distracted driving. While cars are going faster now, we also have more capacity in our vehicles to take our eyes off the road and be more careless. And that is because of technology. And so we have to think selectively and creatively. Nothing can be off the table, but I support that proposal, and I'll support any other proposal that will work specifically to reduce vehicle speed and reduce the likelihood of fatalities. Let's be very clear about the data here. During COVID, vehicle miles traveled went down, but injuries, fatalities, and accidents went up. We're going backwards, and it is only a matter of time before this is fundamentally another public health crisis. So I am absolutely on board with whatever it takes for engineering, planning, or technology to reduce the likelihood of injuries in crashes. And I just want to add one last thing. Speaking of injuries and fatalities.
Oh my. Go ahead, do your smile.
The last thing, if I have 20 seconds, I just want to close it with one of the things that is really critical in vehicle speed and reducing injuries is simply that this is now no longer just a civic planning exercise. Vehicle fatalities are now just literally a public health crisis. It's a public health crisis now. And my job as an elected leader is to protect the health and safety of residents in my community. There is nothing more dangerous to the residents of my community than a car driving in my community. And I want to make sure that we work to make my roads and all of our roads safer.
So unfortunately, I'm the one that worked traffic for the city of Pasadena as a lieutenant for 5 years. And so I worked with the state on these very issues. I had call-outs for 5 years for fatals, and that's no joy, to say the least. But with that came a lot of education. The number one cause of our collisions and our fatals is distracted driving. We saw that increase with the cell phones, and that's why that was an issue that was put on the sweaters for one of the what they call contributing factors to collisions. And so inattentive drivers is the number one factors, with cell phones being directly related to that. Speed, work speed for a long, long time, and I'll share with you that yes, we drive too fast, but we also, unfortunately, don't know how to drive. And so it just is, I'm just telling you. Even as I've been retired now for 10 years, I'll share with you, I see so many violations on the road. I'm like, really? Who gave you your driver's license? Cracker Jack box. And so I'm not making light of the issue, but I'm sharing with you that yes, Pasadena has more speed bumps than any other city of its size, a medium-sized city. And it doesn't slow people down because they realize how to get around it. And I'm not going to tell you how to get around it, but we know that people get around it. So that is not the answer. What it is an individual accountability. The other area that is also a problem is we've seen is hit and runs. Hit and runs are on the increase dramatically across the state, not just the Los Angeles County, but across the state. And that is because people don't want to take accountability, because if you are under the influence of alcohol or drugs when you have a collision, you will be held accountable. These are issues that are systemic, and yes, slowing the car down will help, but it's not the issue.
Well, I'm so thankful to be on the same page with my other candidates here tonight. I do believe it is a combination of what both Jed and Flunte have spoken about, and so I won't repeat what they've said, but I do agree with them to a certain extent. But again, I go back to analyzing how this happens. And I've never been afraid of having the hard conversations, and that's not going to be any different tonight. You said it yourself. There's a lot of drivers out there who don't know what they're doing. And literally, they don't know what they're doing because they're illegal immigrants who don't understand our system. And they are a large part of our community. And so we need to ensure that these individuals go through the same process. This is what happens when we have a large number of illegal immigrants coming into our communities and we don't have the infrastructure to handle that. So they're driving without licenses. We have a lot of individuals with addictions. And so what we need to look at is, how do we really fix this problem? You don't have to like me, but I'm gonna love you enough to speak the truth. Because what happens is, when we don't look at the full picture, we end up with these problems. With a community where we have the highest numbers ever of fatal collisions, crime. And this doesn't mean we don't love those people. This doesn't mean that we don't care about our communities. It means that we have to really take a hard look at the policies that we're creating and how it affects our community, because it's not one or the other. My grandmother taught me this. She's from Peru. She was a God-fearing woman. And she says, a promise from the lips out doesn't mean a thing. So I really hope that you guys will receive it with the heart that it's given, because I do believe we need to be asking ourselves the hard questions.
We have good laws. They need to be enforced. There is the problem of the individual and whatever their distraction, they're addicted, they're just raging at the moment. But those are, as Michelle said, those are complicated, deep issues that I dealt with as a Christian minister counseling people. But out on the road and looking at the safety of our pedestrians, the law enforcement needs to be encouraged. We need to make sure that as government agency, that is one of the ones that we most need to fund, support, recruit. I know our sheriff department is up the hill with us, close by, and they're always recruiting. Every time we've got the council meeting, they come in and give a report, and they say, we need 1,000 more CHPs, we need this many more sheriffs. We have these young explorer programs that we are trying to recruit more, because we have a lot of concerns in our community just with children going to school and back, and the traffic, and but there's just not enough law enforcement officers to be putting the fear of the law into even the parents who are in a hurry going to work. And so we love our police, we love our law enforcement, our CHPs, and we need to support them and give them the tools that they need to do their job, because they love their job and they want to do their job. They want to keep us safe. They want to keep our children safe. Thank you.
So a number of things. First, let me start off by stating very clearly that it is factually incorrect that immigration is driving an increase in traffic-related fatalities. There is no data to support that. I say this as somebody that's done a lot of work on the issue, as somebody that's won awards for my work on this issue. What has happened, and I will use Alhambra as an example, because at one time, Alhambra was #1 for the city with the most traffic-related fatalities amongst elderly individuals. It was a #1 slot that I was not proud for our city to have. This was back in 2016, and we all realized that we had to fix it. Now, how did we get there? Well, over time, what happened is the city of Alhambra was designed to be more car-centric. That means that we cut down our sidewalks so that they weren't as wide. We expanded our roads. We got rid of any sort of infrastructure that was protective bike lanes, and all of a sudden, we saw traffic-related deaths increase for senior citizens who don't have a car to get around. What happened was we took away all of the infrastructure that better serves pedestrians and keeps pedestrians safe and bikers safe, And that's how we ended up in that situation. Now, a lot of our cities have done this, and it was a mistake by many cities because we thought that being car-centric was the future. And now we're here, and we're realizing that that's actually not the case. If any of you have been and traveled across the country to places like Europe, where they have incredibly walkable cities, and it's easy to get around everywhere, either by public transit or by foot, they have designed their cities that way. This is an urban planning issue. Now, what's happening is many of our cities are now trying to reverse course, just as the city of Alhambra is right now. We are about to vote on our active transportation plan next Monday. I'm very proud to be able to approve that after working on that for 2 years. It's going to take an investment of funds, and it's going to take a different way of thinking about how we design our cities. And that is how we are going to make our communities safer. Thank you.
So we're going to open it up for just a few questions, and I'm going to only give our candidates 1 minute to respond to these questions. Yes, 1 minute, and I'm going to be very strict with this 1 minute now. Right, and then also just to give Board Trustee Steve Gibson is here from Pasadena City College. And thank you to Pasadena City College for allowing us to have this space here today. Also, Patrice Marshall McKenzie, who is Pasadena Unified School District. And then also, if I have any other elected officials that I do not know, or commissioners, if you're a commissioner, raise your hand. No, you don't want to, okay. We have commissioners in here as well. And then, sir.
Hi, my name is John Kitzenay. I'm president of the Rosemead School Board.
Thank you. All right, I know everybody wants to ask questions, but we only have time for a few. Yes, ma'am. And also, sorry, not to cut you off, but please direct your questions to all candidates, and please be respectful to all candidates, all right? Yes, come on.
Right here. I want to first start out by saying I appreciate the compassion you have for people that are undocumented immigrants, right? However, when you said that they're the ones that suffer the most, what we're seeing, footage from New York and Chicago, in these cities, that doesn't seem to be the case. Seems like the people that are being overlooked are the blacks in those communities. They seem to be the forgotten ones. You even have a school that they...
I don't want to cut you off, but can you get to the question?
Yeah, so the question is, how do we bring fairness to the people that are here and not overlook them, like the children that now have to do school at home again so that their schools can house people that are here that are undocumented?
That's a really good question of how do we ensure fairness, and the answer of ensuring fairness is ensuring adequate and quality government services for all people of all income levels and all backgrounds. And I refuse to think of policymaking as a zero-sum game, where I have to decide whom I will take something from in order to provide a service or opportunity or resource to. In fact, let's be quite real, immigrants contribute a lot to our economy, not only in tax revenue, but also they stabilize the commodities market because of the work that they provide in our local and macroeconomic system. And so therefore, how do I ensure what's fair and what's opportune for all people? Is to ensure that there's adequate housing, to ensure that there's adequate health care, and to ensure that there's quality education for all people. Not picking for whom, but for all people. And that's how you ensure that. Thank you.
No, in working on the state level as the district director, I can share with you that when bills are passed and the governor signs them, it's for all people. He doesn't carve out and say, and it doesn't matter if it's this governor or the other governors, they don't carve out and say, we can only service a certain amount of people. Because even though we're here to be elected for this district, anything we pass will be for the state of California. And you bring services and perhaps funding for your district, but the actual bill packages that are signed into law are for the state of California. And I know that when other individuals have tried to pass bills in the 3 years I was working with Assemblymember Holden, there was no carve-outs for a certain amount of people. There are packages through the Black Caucus or through the Latino Caucus, the AAPI Caucus, and on, that will specify that a certain percentage will go towards whatever group that they are representing, but everyone gets those services.
Thank you.
So sorry.
Thank you. At the end of the day, we have to weigh all things. It's just not one thing. When we talk about how we're going to get there, right, we have to look at everything. We have to ask ourselves, what got us to this point? And so for myself, I don't just want to throw bureaucracy at it. I can't say it enough. We need to really ask ourselves, every program that we throw into the mix, how is it helping? And at the end of the day, when we go back and look at policies, I'm going to remind you again, and I'm really going to ask you to put all your differences aside and ask yourself, we have since 1972 the majority in the Senate. Since 1996 or 97, now I've forgotten, the majority in the Assembly. Since 2011, we've also had the gubernatorial house. And how has this helped us?
I don't want to be rude, but I'm going to be strict with this 1 minute.
I like to talk. Okay, good question on fairness. Well, there's fairness, there's love and generosity, there's compassion, there's openness to receive all people, but there's also wisdom and priorities. When you fly in an airplane, every time you take off, they tell you, okay, if there's an emergency, the oxygen mask comes down, but don't put it on your child first. You got to put it on yourself first, and then you can help others. With California being in a $68 billion deficit, and our people struggling with housing and cost of living, education, crime, all of these issues that are causing people to leave California. This is the first time in California history our population has gone down. So we've got priorities.
So I want to first, and I think I'm only going to have time to do this, so I want to address, I think, the central kind of root of the question that you're asking, which is, are all of our services, or many of our services, even able to be utilized if you're an undocumented person? Can you take advantage of those services? And the answer is no. Actually, most social services that we provide here in the state of California and the federal government, you actually cannot access any services from the federal government if you do not have documentation status. And so I want to make that very clear. As somebody that's had a family member that's been chronically homeless for most of their life, who also is a citizen of this country, I've watched them navigate the system and basically fail to get help. And so the system is not working for everybody. Whether you are undocumented, whether you are documented, there are gaps in the system. I'll give you one example. I remember trying to assist my cousin with applying for housing, who's been chronically homeless for over 10 years. They wanted her to have an ID. If you are homeless, where would you put your ID card if you've been homeless for 10 years? So think about that. These are the kinds of things we need to take into account.
come up, yeah.
Thank you. That's incorrect. January, I work for Kaiser. January 2024, bill was passed that all undocumented up to 49 can get across the board health care, which actually includes transgender as well. So my question on that, y'all did not address education. I'd like to hear who gets the education, who benefits, because right now a lot of kids are challenged. And also with the healthcare, how do you feel about that, and what are the restrictions that you all may put on that now that we have a law that has come into place that we're going to fund everybody, with Californians struggling. I'm a single Latina woman, it's very hard when I see my check, and now I'm gonna be giving multitudes. So how do y'all expect to tackle that?
So I'm gonna start with Falante, and I'm going to just pivot the question to the last part of healthcare, because you guys did cover education
quite a bit
ahead. So
when we have unhealthy people in our society, we all pay, whether you know it or not. Again, as my 35 years, I can tell you with the hospitals and what goes on with people that come into our hospitals that do not have insurance, they're still taken care of. So you are, regardless if you see it or not, you're being charged for those individuals. I know my health insurance is through the roof, and I figure I'm taking care of my family members that don't work, so I just kind of go with it. But my point is that we need to make sure we have people that are healthy. We need to make sure that medical is for all. And I need to make sure that, as far as me being your elected official, that I help to make sure that we all can be healthy as we can so that we can have a prosperous life. So I'm not against taking care of people, because we're taking care of them anyway. You just don't see it.
Thank you very much for the question. And when I think of the issue of specifically how do we ensure healthy communities and deliver strong health outcomes for all people, there is nothing more expensive than having large swaths of people in our community not have basic access to primary care, where if you feel not well, you can't see a doctor. If you need basic medication that in other developed nations cost very little, you can't have access to. And so when we have people who are uninsured and don't have access to basic primary care, what happens? The most expensive possible outcome happens. They end up in emergency rooms uninsured. And we have to stop that. We have to stop that. If we're serious about reining in healthcare costs, we have to find a way to make sure that all people have some basic medical coverage, because we have got to stop sending uninsured people to the emergency room. It's the most expensive way to do it, and it's what we do when we have large groups of people who are under or uninsured in California. Thank you.
I do believe that everyone should have access to health care. However, I do believe that everything has a cost to it. And so we need to be asking ourselves if we are funding this, right, which in California and most of the United States we do that. Are we growing the problem, or are we making it better, right? Because everything is interconnected. Nothing is a standalone. We don't live life that way. We don't have just one thing that impacted our lives. It's many experiences, one after another one, that forms us, develops us. So when we look at how do we reform immigration, how do we give health care to everyone, it's not just, here you go, here, and it's fixed. Because what we're doing is perpetuating the problem. I can't say it enough. For the last 20 years, we've had policies from the Democrat Party implementing everything they want. They've got carte blanche. So how is it for you in California?
Yes, healthcare is a concern. I've almost died multiple times related to childbirth and complicated pregnancies. I'm so grateful for the resources that we have here in California, that when you have an emergency and you need life-saving, it's there, and we have it available. We have some of the best doctors. A lot of the expense is insurance related. A lot of the expense is related to the actual doctors, insurance, liability, etc. The cost. If we can make life simpler for the doctors themselves, and their costs to go down, our costs will go down. I have noticed in the past several years when I go to the doctor, they have, okay.
So the state legislation that the young woman was speaking to is a state bill, not a federal bill, and is actually a bill that I worked on. This started off as a pilot program that was here in Los Angeles County. It was called the Health for All Coalition that was launched by the California Endowment. And what it essentially allowed for undocumented folks to do is be able to have access to health care. Now, what did we find, just as some of our other candidates mentioned before, providing folks with health care so that they are not constantly going to the emergency room for something like the common cold saved the county hundreds of thousands of dollars. And so we slowly began to expand this program throughout the county. That then became state legislation that Senator Maria Elena Durazo then passed, and that bill has now been signed into law. And so I think when we think about this, it seems like it's going to be very expensive because you are making an investment on the front end. But on the back end, when you are having to constantly pay for emergency room fees for things like a common cold, the stomach flu, because somebody does not have access to health care, we are actually saving tax dollars.
Thank you guys once again for coming. We really appreciate you guys, and thank you to all of our partner organizations. Before you leave, yes, thank you. Thank you to Radio Jornalera, who has graciously gave us this audio equipment and the recording tonight. What I'm going to do is we're going to take last statements, and we're going to give 3-minute last statements to all of the candidates. So you guys can say whatever you didn't get the chance to say in the 2-minute or the 1 minute. There you go, Michelle. But we're going to give each candidate 3 minutes to speak, and these are last statements. And so thank you once again, and we're going to start off with Jed.
Let me start off by thanking all of the organizers, and Brandon, you did a great job moderating, to our timekeeper and all of the organizations. PCC, thank you for hosting, and to all of you. I want to also thank the fellow candidates for being here. Appreciate the dialogue and the opportunity to talk about the issues. To all of you here, I'd like to just share and close with this, and that is, I've been in local government for 6 years, and not all the issues are the same. Not all the challenges come with the same facts or arrive at the same solution, but I can tell you that in a lot of our issues that we're dealing with, at the core of it, we are dealing fundamentally with a crisis in confidence. Every day, people call me at City Hall and say, Jed, I've got this issue, I've got this street, and it has been unsafe for years. What do we do to make it safer so when my kids cross the street, I don't have to worry about a collision? Jed, what do we do about the fact that we have people who are more and more every year at risk of losing their housing because rent is going up too quickly to keep pace with their wages? Every year, what do we do with the fact that there is inadequate mental health infrastructure and there are people whom we want to help, but we can't help them because there isn't adequate safety net and basic mental health care to provide that? We are in a crisis of confidence in every single issue that you all brought up. And so I'm really proud to be here as a candidate for the State Assembly, because in my time in public service, I'm a doer. I believe fundamentally that we can keep talking about bullet points. We can hit the issues that were handed to us on a piece of paper. We can say the things that we were instructed to say, but at the end of the day, your leaders have to deliver. And let me tell you what I have delivered. We now have a complete streets program in the city of Claremont. I led the charge to fund an electric bike rebate program, an electric bike rental program, fully subsidized for residents in my town. We now have protected bike lanes going through major arterial roads in our city. I built and funded and got entitlement and approval for affordable housing, and now we have reduced homelessness, not only in my second, but also in my third year in office. I am telling you that the work of these challenges is remarkable, and we've got to elect the doers. And so the thing that I have to say to you tonight is not something I've done or something I've accomplished or how great I am and why I should be your assembly member. The thing I want to close with you is, are we ready to take those big steps? In 10 years, are we still going to be talking about homelessness? In 10 years, are we still going to be talking about housing affordability? Or are we ready to take the steps and elect the doers? I hope we're ready, and I know that we are. Thank you.
You know, as a candidate for state assembly, and I know that everyone here that is at this forum running for these particular offices, it takes a lot of thought to do this. This is not an easy lift. And I say that because you need to look at yourself not just in the mirror, but look at who's going to be supporting you also through this challenge. I say that because as I, think about my own life background, coming up in Altadena, single mother with my two sisters, dealing with housing insecurities, moving 4 times in Altadena before I was in the 10th grade. I know what it feels like to pack up your stuff and have to move. I know what it feels like to miss the bus or, and then have to walk from John Muir High School to Altadena. I know what it feels like to have to get the money off the counter to get lunch and then have a 10th grade counselor tell you that you're not going to go to college anyway, so you don't need to take Algebra 2, take home ec because, your mother's on government assistance. These things are part of what shapes me in a lifelong life service, starting with the police department, being an affirmative action hire, and being told that I was taking a man's job and would not be able to do that job because I was just a mere woman. And then every step of the way fighting, being a fighter, being a change agent, literally putting people on notice that I was here to serve the community, and getting tagged with something that I'm very proud of now is being a social worker with a badge. I'm good with that. Working on areas as I moved and transitioned as an adjunct professor, teaching literally unequal justice and how bias-based policing, and making sure that people that come into that profession know that they have to serve everyone equally. Understanding that the population that is unhoused comes from many different directions and avenues. It's not just drugs, it's not just alcoholism, it's not just mental health. Senior women are the #1 fastest growing population of homelessness. You lose a spouse, you lose a check. You get divorced, you lose a check. You have one major crisis in your life and you can find yourself homeless. So we have to have some compassion for that and understand that a one size doesn't fit all. And when we talk about transitional housing, you need to have mental health services on site with a manager, case manager, because psychosis does not happen between 8 a.m. and 5 p.m. It happens at 2 o'clock in the morning, a graveyard officer, trust and believe. And you need to make sure that those officers have the training and the services they need to do that job so that it's not a lose-lose. I have the experience. Thank you, Mr. Holden, for your acceptance and your mentoring, and I'm looking forward to moving on in this process. Thank you.
Thank you to POPs and all the organizations that invited us tonight, and I thank my fellow candidates as well for their opinions this evening. And I'm going to say this. From the time I graduated from high school, I went to work. I was tenacious. I didn't know what I was going to do. I had a cousin who had just finished like some work program where she learned how to do bookkeeping and got a job, and she went, hey, come work with me. And I went, okay, I can do that. And the reason for that was because I came from a very traditional, conservative family who was like, you can't go to college and leave the house unmarried? So I've overcome quite a bit. But I was tenacious, and I found a way for myself. And I understand what you're talking about. I know what it is to sit in the boardroom and be the woman that's overlooked every single time. But I'm not looking in the rearview mirror, because every time that happened, there was that one spark of hope where somebody went, well, what did you say again? And I took it. I took it and I ran with it. And I made an amazing career for myself, and in 2017, I got to take an early retirement. And I do this because I truly want to save our community and the American spirit for the next generation. You can do anything your heart desires, not because I say so, but because I am made in the image of God. And he told me anything is possible. With God on my side, I can move mountains. And we've forgotten to say that to this generation. This generation is broken and confused, and they're feeling it. They're feeling it. My family is a perfect story of the Americans' story today. Not what my parents came for, not that American dream, but the story. My parents were able to buy 2 homes in Pasadena. By hard work, my husband and I, of 20 years, we were able to buy 3 homes in Pasadena. We worked really hard. We saved our money, everything, and we were able to do that. My brother, God bless him, has a beautiful home, but he had to travel 40 miles outside of Pasadena and bought a home in Fontana, because that's the only place where it was reasonable. And my little sister, who has the most accolades, she's a PhD, she's a licensed behavioral scientist, and she had to build a casita on my parents' property in Pasadena because she wanted to stay here. And that's what's wrong with California right now, that you can do everything right, and it's still too hard. So I'm gonna leave you with this one question. How did we get here? You know, it's hard to ask the tough questions, but how did we get here? And after you evaluate that, I would ask that you be honest with yourself and make the right choices. God bless you.
Yeah, I also want to thank all of the organizers tonight, the sponsors, and you did such a wonderful job moderating the questions. Thank you. It's been a pleasure to meet some of you. Thank you to the fellow candidates. My family background, we are 5 generations California born. Goes back to the mid-1800s. It was much harder to arrive as an immigrant in the 1800s as Chinese. The immigration laws were against us. Even though my great somebody was born in California, my grandfather was actually born in China because Chinese wives were not allowed to immigrate. So the men had to go back to China to get married, have their children. But my grandfather was involved politically to change those immigration laws. And it took years, but it happened. And so my heritage is to be civically involved for the wisdom and the well-being and the contribution. This is public service. And so instead of retiring, I am expanding my service, and I would love to serve you as State Senate. I had mentioned before that this is the first time in California history that our population is going down. How many of you have friends, neighbors, family members that they're gone? They're out of California. A lot of it is because of economics during COVID. Some of it is because of education. Many families, businesses are leaving because of tax burden to start up a new business. But we have had a California dream in our family for 5 generations. It was hard at the beginning, but every generation was able to build on the previous generation. And this is our California dream. And with Ron's family still in Glendale, and my parents in Glendale, and Johnny and our 6 kids are still here in Los Angeles County, and we're not going anywhere. We are saying, all right, this trajectory is going the wrong way with the $68 billion deficit, crisis. And homelessness, we spent $22 billion already on homelessness here, and it's getting worse. It increased 10% last year. So even though there's money, the solution is not money. It's wisdom. All right, so the time is up. I'm going to just give this closing remark that I prepared. Love, lives, liberty, law. In these insecure times, I would like to bless you with thoughts of peace and not of evil, to give you a future and a hope. As your California State Senator, Elizabeth Wong Allers will represent you for a brighter and prosperous California. This is our time.
I too want to thank everybody for being here tonight, for participating, all of the organizers for putting this together, and all of the candidates. As a candidate myself, I can tell you that running for office is incredibly challenging and is certainly a journey. So I know that many of us are going through the exact kind of similar challenges that we're facing right now. I want to share with you all a personal story. Just last night, I got a hold of one of my family members who still lives on the streets. As I shared with you before, I have many family members that have faced homelessness and are still struggling with homelessness. And I finally located her for the first time after 7 months. I was very happy to do that. And when I think about why I'm running for office, it is for people like her, for people like my family. I do not want anybody to ever have to experience the loss and the hardship that my family went through when we lost my cousin, when we lost my aunt after they had spent the majority of their lives living out on the streets. It was devastating, and that moment and everything that happened that day still haunts me to this day. I think I've heard some of the other candidates mention that, we have had a Democratic majority here in California. Why haven't we seen more movement? Why haven't we seen more changes? And I think in addition to the fact that we've had a Democratic majority, there's also been legislators that have mostly been wealthy, that have mostly come from a certain status, that have represented us for a long time. And for the first time in a very long time, we're having people that are working class, we're having diverse people, we're having women that are stepping up and running for office. And that is very important and very critical, because when we run, when somebody like me runs, somebody who's experienced the tragic loss of losing somebody out on the street, we have skin in the game. I talked about some of the policies that I passed, and many of those policies were the first to ever be implemented in Alhambra. And part of the reason and how I got them done in such a short period of time, in 4 years, is because I legislated like my family's lives depended on it. And that's the kind of work that our elected officials need to do, and that's the kind of work that I'm standing here before you to do for all of you. I'm the only candidate in this race endorsed by the California Democratic Party, endorsed by nurses, endorsed by teachers, by firefighters, and by so many everyday working people just like you in this audience. And I'm so excited to get up there and to move legislation for this community that I've lived in my entire life. So thank you all so much for being here with us today, and I look forward to working with each and every one of you.
Thank you guys so much. My name is Brandon Lamar. It was a pleasure to be your moderator today. I am the co-chair of Pasadena's Organizing for Progress, and good night. Be safe. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
That's my dad's team. Great to meet you. Thank you for joining us.